Welcome back. You're watching The Fix with me, Karima Brown. President Cyril Ramaphosa is furiously working behind the scenes to craft a new economic rescue plan for the meltdown in South Africa amid the added devastation caused, of course, by COVID-19. But the plan needs buy-in from key stakeholders, including the African National Congress's leftist allies. Joining me to give their perspective on what ought to be in that plan is the Deputy Secretary General of the South African Communist Party, Mr. Solly Mapahila. Mr. Mapahila, thank you so much for joining us. The South African Communist Party recently had a central committee. You came out very strongly against what you called the Treasury's kind of hold on the economy. How does that sit? How does that, critique sit with the fact that the President is yet to put together a plan that needs buy-in from all of them? Can I ask you, have you seen the government's economic plan? And if you have, what exactly is your take on it?
Well, firstly, we have not seen the plan per se as the Communist Party, but we have discussed it through different forums, whether it's our Network Community Constituency, where we're able to discuss it in that context. But we must indicate that initially we had jointly developed a plan as the Alliance, which was a plan to take us through COVID process as well as COVID process transformation of the economy. And at the core of that was a government intervention through the stimulus package to reverse the impact of COVID-19, but also to invest in new sections of the economy in order to rebuild the economy. And we see this having been eroded. But part of that package, most of it was not followed up. For instance, the whole section about what the government called impact investment assets, which we prefer to call them prescribed assets, and they are called so even in the manifesto that we adopted with the ANC. But we don't have a problem with the name, whether it's impact investment assets. But when the stimulus package was pronounced, we were quite shocked at where the money came from. It was not much a stimulus package, but rather a reprioritization of government budget, including worrying trends where government reneged on its commitment to pay the public sector wage bill, which they've already signed with the public sector workers, which we reject with the contempt that it deserves, because we think government must lead by example and honor its agreement. But on the one hand, the biggest intervention of that, a single intervention of that stimulus package was the 200 billion that they guaranteed credit through the Reserve Bank and as well as the commercial banks, a select few of the commercial banks, not even public investment banks or development finance institutions like the IDC and the DBSA. So all this big money was given to finance capital. And finance capital has shown complete disregard and only spent about less than 20% of that money, which is quite shocking because they don't show the agency to the challenges that we face. And we feel that this money could have been diverted into better causes, better areas, including through development finance institutions. Okay. So we're quite worried about the austerity measures that are characterizing the interventions, particularly through the Treasury.
Now, I know that last week, Mr. Mapahila, there was meant to be an alliance gathering that included the African National Congress, yourselves, and COSATU, but that meeting was postponed because of scheduling issues. How soon are you going to meet as an alliance, and are you having the space in that alliance to raise the concerns that you have outlined here with the African National Congress?
Yes, the rescheduling will happen quite soon. I think the following week, the Secretariat should be able to finalize a way forward, including convening the Alliance Political Council, which we have long agreed. It's just a question of a scheduling. But that's neither here nor there in the main. The critical point is the fact that we cannot accept this neoliberal economic trajectory when the country is facing crisis, because as long as people don't accept that the capitalist system cannot be rescued through the public purse, rather the public itself, the public economy need to be resuscitated, rebuilt. That's the only way in which you can then be able to rebuild our economy, because the primary problems of South Africa's problem, as you know, were caused by the transportation of the capitalist system to our shores. Although it came through slavery, which was the origin of imperialism, and imperialism, as you know, is the highest stage of capitalism, which is driven by state systems. So the colonizers used the capitalism as a tool. So post-1994, as we defeat the apartheid, which is racial oppression, and its economic oppression, which is still based on race and racial bigotry, we did not transform the system significantly.
Mr. Mapaila, I hear your ideological concerns, but let's do practical unpacking of what that means, okay?
Those are practical questions.
No, I hear you, but let's, for example, take the transportation system. So if one is to decode what you are saying, you're essentially saying that you have an apartheid spatial plan that still puts poor people very far away from economic centers in our country, which, of course, makes getting to and from work very difficult. So I hear what you're saying. Practically, what are you putting on the table, or what are you demanding should be in this plan that will address this? We've seen the taxi in Durban that was held, for example, but public transport in South Africa is in a complete mess.
Yeah, what we're saying is that the stimulus package that we require should also involve prescribed assets, because we've got enough money in the country, over 12 trillion rands, in the prescribed, that is retirement and pension funds and asset management industry, and transform that section, finance capital, which is the one that is controlling our economy. But in the meantime, what we have seen is, instead of transforming that section, is a collusion of government with that system that continues that racial oppression in terms of economic intervention. So we need enough resources to intervene in the dire needs of the country, to provide food security for the people, water, deal with the crisis of social reproduction, which means the inability of the people now to meet their ends meet. So for that, you need a direct intervention so that people can have sustainable livelihoods for themselves. That's why we're launching our Red October campaign this year, again, on sustainable livelihoods for water, housing, or human settlement, and against hunger, and for the water services across the country, because COVID-19 has shown that we need to build that infrastructure across the board, and we're agreeing with government to focus these interventions at the district model level, rebuild our transport system, but also ensure that the public continue to accept that public facilities belongs to all of us, and therefore they must be protected. So we're talking to issues that are bread and butter, if you like, but you can't denounce the fact that they are based on an ideology. The reason that, for instance, Treasury doesn't care about the loss of jobs at South African Airways and other SOEs, because they simply want to follow a capitalist book accounting system. This one doesn't work, we cut it out. This one doesn't work. They don't care about the impact of workers who lose their jobs and the thousands of their family members who will no longer have something to eat.
Okay,
so
Mr. Mapaila, I get the point. Yeah, I get the point that you're making. So, in terms of SAA as it stands, does the South African Communist Party support the 10 billion rand which Cabinet had agreed to make available to bail out, the process of reconstruction that is happening there, so that a new airline can be, begin to take shape? Because this week we saw that the money wasn't forthcoming. It is being pitted in the media as a battle between the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, and the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. But there is a cabinet decision that commits the government to that process. What is the SACP's position on how government should address the question of recalibrating SAA?
Well, we have supported the current interventions, but what is important is to correct the notion of the bailout. It's not a bailout, it's recapitalization of that airline to function. Even businesses, all the time, they recapitalize themselves to adjust, whether it's for a particular form of transformation within an entity in order to function and become profitable. So we've said the same should happen with state-owned entities. When there's interventions of that matter, this should not be scorned or at as if it's something that should not happen. But we support the Minister of Public Enterprise in his posture to try and salvage whatever remains of SAA because of the tardiness of Treasury. We have seen even the business rescue people being actually or almost been driven to fail, but I think we must appreciate their restraint not to completely liquidate the entity. And Cabinet has taken a decision. The Minister of Finance must just follow that. It should not even be a spat between him and the Minister of Public Enterprises. He must just follow the Cabinet decision and intervene and make sure that that airline is recapitalized and we can rebuild it into one of the biggest airlines on the continent, as it was before.
Where's the money going to come from?
There's enough money in government. I mean, the 200 billion that was given to the public sector, to the private banks as part of the stimulus packages, only 15 to 18 billion was spent. So where's the 180 billion? It's still there. So the issue is that when you recapitalize your entity, you are not throwing away the money. The entity can function and become profitable. And we have demonstrated enough to government the fact that this airline could be profitable. In any case, some of its divisions have been profitable. So the manner in which this was approached was completely to do away with SOEs, particularly the most strategic ones, because South Africa will require an airline, a profitable airline. Whether you take away a SAA, others will come. But the problem is that the banks that are the main creditors are the ones that actually early this year told government that they will never put money into that particular entity. They are so arrogant, and the Treasury goes with them when actually they should be disciplined, because they get their money, by the way, from not only from the depositors, but also from the South African Reserve Bank.
All right, just quickly before we go, obviously any economic recapitalization of SAA and other state institutions are going to be bogged down, not just by questions of how to service the debt, if that decision is seen through, but also the way these institutions are run. They were prime, places where state capture happened. The struggle against corruption is a very real one. Someone was saying to me, we should stop talking about corruption in abstract terms. We should talk about the stealing of water, the stealing of electricity, the inability of poor families to afford bread. That is what those who steal from the state actually cause. How important is the struggle against corruption? And more importantly, does your ally, the African National Congress, have the will and the strength to actually deal with corruption within its own ranks?
Well, corruption it's a very serious cancer in our society, and we agree that all of society agree that we need to fight corruption. And the president has now demonstrated the willingness to lead the African National Congress and government in the fight against corruption. And we are joining him in this regard, because we have been in the field fighting corruption. We launched multiple campaigns in the fight against corruption. And we agree with also your explanation, because corruption happens in many forms, but it is corruption from the public purse that is the most despicable, because it steals whatever little that we have meant for the poor and for the livelihoods of the most vulnerable in our society. So we are joining this particular campaign. We think it's very important to clean the state-owned entities. They must lead by example as the most efficient and free from corruption, and deliver services to our communities and make our economy thrive again, so that we can continue to grow and also lead in development. So we applaud the president's leadership in this regard, and we think we will have to bear on our alliance partner to accept that we can't carry with us corrupt elements and continue to find rationalization in the name of factional alignment inside the organization. We have to deal with corruption across the board, irrespective of who's involved.
All right, that is where we leave it. Thank you so very much to the Deputy Secretary General there of the South African Communist Party, Solly Mapaila. Still ahead, economists and think tanks weigh in on what a new economic plan for South Africa needs to look like. Stay with us.